Yep. Hi, everyone. I'm Sumeet Jain. I am VP of Product Security at BeyondTrust. We are an identity and access management company. I have about 18 years of application security experience. I have worked mostly for security vendors to my own peril. I worked at CrowdStrike. I have worked at Rapid7, RSA, and I work for BeyondTrust. Happy to discuss the pain points as well as the good parts of being an application security leader.
Wonderful. And James, how about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, guys. And good to be here. James Green, Chief Product Officer at Healer. My background, started my career autonomous air vehicles, spent a number of years there, and then joined Rapid7, where led engineering across full management, application security, offensive security, and also cloud security. So good to be with
Wonderful.
everyone. And
It's about a 90-day playbook for new AppSec leaders. We're going to be leading heavily on Sumeet to talk us through how he would approach it. We're going to really structure it in three ways. First, talking about the first 30 days, then the next 30 days, so 31 through 60, and then the remaining 61 through 90 days. And we'll walk through each one and really ask Sumeet for his guidance and and James as well. Coming from the engineering side, because I think there's a great meeting of the minds here, the application security leader and the engineering leader, being able to talk about what's important and how do they interact, because part of application security obviously runs through engineering, which is where James has spent most of his time. So with that, would love to kick it off. So we've talked. And by the way, we have a white paper that we can send out to everybody also, where we got Sumeet's comments on this topic and a number of other AppSec leaders. But let's start first with the discovery phase. Those days 1 through 30, really understanding the team and the business landscape. Sumeet, what are the first things that you do when you walk into a new organization as an AppSec leader in those first 30 days to try and to focus in on that discovery phase?
Yeah, absolutely. To tie back your earlier point, the first and foremost thing I do is to understand who are my key stakeholders. Everyone has a customer, right? And for AppSec, the key customers are folks within the engineering team or different roles within engineering team. So the leaders of like the development, software development, the DevOps team, the QA team, customer success. And then there is also marketing as well as sales leadership that you would want to go out and like introduce yourself, understand how they basically deliver what they care about, and forming like a mental map of how your organization functions.
Yeah.
Um, that's one key part. So you cannot establish relationships within first 30 days, but if you go in and if you understand what different stakeholders care about uh,
Yeah.
before presenting all the security problems and what you have done in the past or what are the application security challenges, it's key to establish that trust before you open any topic around security or what are you going to do and how are you going to change the world. So
You,
that's the key part of it.
you had mentioned in an earlier interview with you that was really about the a successful security strategy starts with empathy.
Right.
And can you dive in a little bit more about what that means, like with those different stakeholders?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, security teams find stuff. Engineering, at least in the application security world, engineering fixes things. QA fixes things. Customer success goes and to that extent fix things. So if you are not empathetic towards your stakeholders, you will find things all day long. But from a value delivery perspective, nothing is going to get fixed.
Yeah.
Having that empathy or understanding or putting yourself in the stakeholder's shoes will help you drive the outcomes that you want to drive, right? So one small example would be if you present the vulnerabilities or if you identify the risks and present it in the environment that your developers like to work in, that's like an empathy right there, right? Like you're caring about what their user experience is. If you own the prioritization and if you are open to negotiation, there is empathy there where you are not coming in as a cop or a store shop or a showstopper. You're coming in as a business enabler and someone who is reasonable and someone who you can work with. So that empathy of understanding where your stakeholders value system lies and what you want to drive from a security perspective is something that is key to understand that.
James, how does that as a head of engineering who worked with Sumeet in his security role? How does that resonate with you? What walk us through it a little bit?
Yeah, no, I think it's well said, and it's you know you want to know that you have a partner, right? At the end of the day, right? It's someone new coming in, and you on you're like, oh, we're gonna get new handcuffs put on, but really, when someone comes in, is just trying to understand, right? Is understand the product roadmap, understanding what are the goals, what are the challenges you're facing as an engineering leader, right? Trying to build the product, right? You're already overwhelmed with the amount of features being asked by the business, the quality issues and I think establishing yourself as almost like the PM for customer trust, right? Because ultimately with the product security, that's what your goal is having those customers trust the product and from the security perspective that they can use. And I think that goes a long way to that point of building empathy, where you, like I said, you have a partner. You have a partner that's wanting to understand not just what's going on, but why. Like, why are things in the state that they are?
That's great. And Sumeet, in those first 30 days, one of the things that we heard from you and from other leaders that we interviewed was sort of two things that tie together. One was this concept of no rabbit holes, that a lot of leaders say, I'm deeply technical. I want to be a hands-on person, but I have to resist, diving in too deep initially because I've got to stay at that, at a level where I can observe the big picture. And then similarly, there was a observe without changing within those first 30 days. Can you talk me through a little bit how you balance that in the first 30 days? Like, I mean, what are you trying to accomplish in those first 30 days beyond the relationships from, outside of that, if that makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is true for all roles, right? Coming in, like, there have been past. You do not come. You are not coming in into a greenfield opportunity. There has already been an organization that's moving in at potentially speed of light and doing a lot of things. So you cannot come in and put in your past experiences and just apply whatever worked at your previous organization to the organization that you are just joining, right? So you need to understand the lay of the land. You need to understand the tech stack. You need to understand how change management is done. You need to understand how operations are done. You need to understand your own team of what is driven, how operations are working. So if you just go about and talk about one technical aspect of it or one tool of it or like one particular way which you had success in the past, then that's like narrowing the scope of conversations and you are going to miss out on the big picture. So that's
Yeah.
one part of it, right? Like you are not going to understand the problem. So whatever change you bring in has a potential to go wrong in multiple ways, both within your team as well as outside your team. And second is your fix won't be comprehensive enough. There is no way within the first 30 days, if you start changing things, you would have any idea of what the impact of that change is going to be without understanding the lay of the landscape at the broader organization level, right? So your change either will be shallow or it's going to fix like it's going to fix like a symptom rather than a problem. And
Yeah.
yeah, so resist the need to impose your style or your past experiences. The word unlearn is key here.
Yeah.
Unlearn from what you have learned in the past and then learn about the new environment that you're in and the new organization that you are in.
Well, and I'd love to tease on that because one of the quick wins for the first 30 days that we heard from you and many others was like model the business. It was interesting when talking to a lot of the AppSec leaders, the thing that they said distinguished them from really everyone else was that they, along with their team, really are the only ones that have a view of every part of the SDLC, from the design phase to how customers are using it. IT, engineering, architecture, account management, post sales, professional services, everyone's siloed to some extent. But
Right.
security people are the ones that see this whole story. And because of that visibility, there was, there's this huge opportunity to create business value by really outlining how the business works. What are the processes? What are the sub processes? How do the fit teams work together? Where are the handovers? What's broken? Getting that bird's eye view to your counterparts then, coming to them with this context also of saying, I've done my homework. So when I come to you, I understand what services exist, how they relate, how the applications operate, all that. Can you walk us through, like, is that do you see that as a quick win and a value add to the business?
I definitely see that as a quick win, and that's where I think a healer like product, right, that can give me like a bird's eye view where I
Yeah.
can go and make an intelligent conversation with my counterparts. AppSec, I think it's absolutely near in the head that a big part of being an AppSec leader is also be a great connector across the business. Even within engineering org, your DevOps is siloed from your engineering, which is siloed from if there is a separate QA, which is siloed from your customer success, and how different ways of entering your production environment is managed. So if you take the time and effort to do that mental mapping and then present it back to your different stakeholders, that's definitely a great way to earn their trust and respect.
So let me go through because I want to switch to the next. Oh, sorry, James, you're going to say something.
Yeah, I was gonna say no. I think it's a great point. If you can find something that has like that can be delivered that has this cross functional value, right? Where it's not just security value, but it's something that to all the different functions that you mentioned, Sumeet, where oh this is helpful, right? This is something that there's always these tasks or items that are not done, right? That actually can make the life of everyone a little bit better. And so
Right.
bringing that shared understanding, I think it's just a great opportunity, especially in that first initial time frame.
That's great. So let's go through the checklist for discovery phase and tell me if we're missing anything here, Samir, because this is what we compiled from a conversation with a bunch of leaders. Step one, meet the counterparts in engineering, DevOps, QA, customer success, sales, and marketing. Number
Mm-hmm.
two, discover organizational structure and processes. Number three, learn how your new organization's products are built and sold, because the bottom line is ultimately the bottom line, right? Build a mental or digital model of the organization's SDLC. Note any broken handoffs or processes in the SDLC. Identify specific security issues that have previously had a business impact. Um, Assess the state of automation, what's manual, what slows people down, and then identify duplication and security tooling across teams and products. Is there anything we're missing there from the first 30 days in terms of a sort of that checklist for discovery?
No, that's a great list, and I think the last 3 or 4 points that you mentioned are like internally you are kind of also mapping the attack surface across your organization, right? Like at least making an attempt towards it. So
Yeah, it's great. Well, let's move on to what we think of as the stabilization phase, 31 through 60, where it's really about implementing core security practices. And I think during the first month, you've reviewed what you've got. You've now become familiar with the team and the tools. Um, when do is this where you establish a baseline? Is this where you start to fix issues? Is this where you start to establish the metrics for success that you want to govern by? Walk us through a little, like what is that next 30 days, that 31 through 60 look like in your playbook?
yeah. So for me, I think it's defining from a metrics perspective, defining what good looks like. Not necessarily starting measuring, but at least
Okay.
starting defining what good would look like in the context of the organization that you are in now.
Yeah.
Again, there needs to be a little bit of unlearning that might have been done. Some things might have been priority for the previous organization, which not necessarily is the nature of the organization that you might be a B2C organization now, or you might have different tech stack that the old metrics doesn't apply to anymore. Your deployment models might be different, many different things to consider, right? So yeah, so defining or at least starting formulating the picture of what good looks like, and that basically generally comes down to like defining your metrics or your metrics that you're going to start measuring yourself, your team, and your organization against. So that would be one.
And
Uh,
what's the top metric that you care about? Like when you
yeah.
walk in, is it different in
So
every organization, or is there one that you just sort of
it's
like
different for
always?
every organization.
Okay.
So, for example, like at some organization, for me, the disclosure process or the way we work with external researchers or the way we work with our pen testers was not optimal.
Yeah.
And that's like a bad look if you're an enterprise level company, right? Like you want to have that key insight from external researchers into your organization, because you cannot never scale internally to find all those things.
Yeah.
In some organizations, the processes were manual. So the efficiency metrics were important for me. And in some organization, there were like proliferation of tools. So standardization or consolidation of tools was important.
Yeah.
So it could definitely change as the organization.
And I know you just mentioned disclosure. Getting disclosure right is one of the sort of critical responsibilities of the stabilization plan, in your opinion.
Yeah. So, yeah, one of the key, right? So that falls under your operational. Like,
Yeah.
at a broad level, I divided into two. Like, how do you react or how do you operate?
Yep.
And efficiency comes into place, and then how you are detecting for remediation. So your coverage metrics and your everyone wants to talk about it, but like your mean time to remediation metrics and things like that come into play when you are kind of building those metrics out. But that's where the first 30 days come into play, right? Like if you are not aware of your tech stack, and if you're not aware of your stakeholders, and if you're not aware of how product is getting built,
Hmm.
how are you going to know, how are you going to standardize?
Yeah.
How are you going to actually go and build out efficiency metrics or response metrics if you're not aware of what you have learned in the first 30 days for about your own organization?
And talk to us about, because I know establishing a baseline, we talked about previously creating clear definitions for what constitutes acceptable levels of security for build pipelines or vol management or handling open source dependencies. I'm assuming this is a partnership with the engineering team. How do you go about doing that in that 31 to 60 days in a way that is collaborative?
So I'll take one practical example, right? Like especially in multi-product, most enterprises are multi-product, which means like it's anywhere it's like north of 40, 50 Scrum teams. DevOps seems to be centralized, but it is not kind of centralized. Again, like understanding different ways of how things are done within that particular product line, right? All the way from like how do you build to how do you deploy to how do you design, and how do you manage once the things are out, uh, uh, and then trying to find a common trait across all these different product lines, and then start introducing or replacing the tools, or standardizing on tools is the key part here. So for example, at one organization, I had worked, there were like 5 different SaaS tools that were for different tech stacks. We couldn't consolidate to one, but we were able to consolidate to two. That's still a great efficiency of like reduction of 60% of the tools across the organization, not
Yeah.
just from the cost perspective, but from your process perspective, from your efficiency perspective, from training your developers, training your own team perspective. There are many different layers that you can start creating that efficiencies around. So
Yeah.
yeah, and then the hygiene that you had mentioned, right? Like the key thing,
Yeah.
like vulnerability management. Like so again, with your response function, if your response function is not strong, you can detect all day long, but you won't be able to fix everything.
Yeah.
Open source, 80% of your source code is open source, so it's purely attack surface. Like target your biggest attack surface, or where you are most
Yeah.
potentially vulnerable. So those are the kind of fundamentals or hygienes you need to tackle first before you start introducing the latest AI agent into your
Well,
efficiency
we'd
guide.
heard that one of the big quick wins was eliminating entire vulnerability class. Yeah,
Right.
so I think you had talked about gaining credibility by tackling one specific type of risk first across the entire environment. Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, so you'll be surprised how many organizations are working on the latest fuzzing technologies, but there are secrets in source code, plain text secrets in the source code. Those are the kind of basics, right? Like absolutely all the way end to end. Try to get those basics in. It also think of it as a pilot, right? Like think of
Yeah.
it as a pilot of how are you taking something from all the way from a maturity level. So when you eliminate something like or you create the line of no plain text secrets in source code period, whether you are test or automation or production, right? And you start working towards that, you practically are mapping out how are you going to do all the way automation, or your key managers, how do you rotate secrets, what's your secret life cycle, how are you going to do pre-commit hooks, how are you going to have the tools that is going to give the developer that capability. So you run through the whole level of all the way from a preventive perspective to how do you respond when you detect something,
Yeah.
all the things are exercised in that idea. So that would be a great win because
Yeah.
it's tangible and you can present
Yes.
something to
Yeah.
your leadership.
You can show impact quickly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good, James.
yeah, no, I think it's great. I mean, to go, kind of like this deep versus broad mentality, right? To go deep on one area,
Mhm.
create like a tangible outcome, right? Something that makes a material difference, and then it starts to build momentum, right? It starts to exemplify, okay, this is different than maybe we've seen in the past, and you just have the momentum both with your partners, say on the engineering side, PM, customer success, to start moving forward.
And then our checklist for the 31 through 60 days are as follows. And again, keep us honest here, Sumeet, if we're missing something or if there's things in particular. So first, review existing security practices in vulnerability management, disclosure, security hygiene and build pipelines, and then open source security practices. And then we have establish a clear baseline, define what good security hygiene looks like, fix the most glaring issues and plug the urgent gaps, introduce security metrics that drive decision making, not just report activity, automate first, eliminate inefficiency before they scale, and then build a scalable vulnerability management disclosure process. Does that sound like a reasonable checklist of what you want to try and knock out in that intermediate 30 days?
Absolutely. I think that's a great list to work off.
So let's talk about the next stage, which we think of as the optimizations phase, the 61 through 90, where it's really aligning security strategy with business goals. Um, Here, again, you're shifting from this initial stabilization, and now you're looking to drive greater operational efficiency. Um, a few things we heard repeatedly here. One, detection and visibility, right? But again, it's what do you know? How do you get rid of the unknown? What is it? The
Done.
the unknown knowns or the known unknowns? How do you get rid of the blind spots, right? And then I think fundamentally, how do you actually start to drive fixing, right? Because you know what? It's not about more finding, it's about more fixing.
Right.
Um, and then to your point, really leaning into operational efficiency here, really automating for scale. And then as we just talked about, it's about shifting from find more to fix more. So can we talk, and then right sizing that toolbox? Can we talk through a little bit, how do you approach this now critical sort of 61 to 90 days where I assume like you're really leaning in to drive change at this point. Um,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. So now let's lean on what we learned in first 60 days, right? Like now we have some sort of idea of what kind of tooling you can go and select because you have some idea of how you are going to standardize some of the practices. So there will be an intelligent conversation around which tools work, which tools needs to be replaced. So things around that. The second thing you mentioned, the other name for that is prioritization, right? Like you
Yeah.
can find things all day long, you can add two more tools and find more things and most of the security vendors measure themselves by how many things did we find, how many vulnerabilities did we find in the last 30 days or in the last
Yeah.
15 days. So prioritization and understanding again how your development environment works or how actually things are fixed, combining that two will actually drive the remediation elements of it, which is the value you actually want. So again, something like Healer, which can give us the context of the environment, right, and can help us prioritize things that are highest risk for us as an organization, and then only give developers that curated list rather than giving them a laundry list of everything that you would want to fix.
Well,
Um,
let's talk about developers then, because I know one of the big ones that you talked about is building credibility with developers. And James, you've been there firsthand. What are the ways that application security can build credibility with you?
Yeah, I mean, I think one is the focus just on the developer experience. What is the developer experience from a security perspective? What's the expectations set forth for on the development side? How do they interact with the findings? Is there a unified process, right? So you're not necessarily learning, if you've got different tools, like, well, I got to learn a different process for each tool, right? Are we forcing essentially the security tooling choices on the development team, or are we creating what is a great developer experience where it's basically normalized across those different tools and provided exactly what the business needs from an AppSec perspective. So I think that's an area where you'll have repeated operational efficiency by focusing on allowing developers to completely understand what needs to be done and creating that great developer experience for them from a security perspective.
Now, Sumeet, I know you've mentioned security teams do need to know when to put their foot down and block a release versus when to find that middle ground. How do you is that just a negotiation? Like what how do you make that in a way that it's institutionalized, that it's not a random chaotic sort of mess?
Yeah, so there are different ways to look at it. So one is obviously SLA, right? So you as a company have contractual SLAs. There are things like externally forced on you, like named vulnerabilities or researcher finding things for you. Some of that, but I think on a broader level, it's like moving up the maturity scale. So we talked about how do we eliminate a class of vulnerabilities. Like so, for example, let's say secrets. We bring secrets back into the picture. Um, um, Having that foot down of because the baseline is clean, we have those preventive controls in place, developers are educated about it, and it's part of that the way they work. So now we can actually block a release if any of the secrets are found in scan prior to the release.
Yeah.
That is an accepted kind of a workflow for the developers, and then you scale it out to other kind of vulnerability classes, which you can again from metrics figure out like where are you more susceptible
Yeah.
to, based either your coding style or how you are deployed or what your tech stack is and things like that. So you
And
can move up the scale that way.
And to your point, I mean, you said this earlier in our interviews. It's non-negotiable to do automation first. Devs won't go out of their work environment. Adding any new manual process will not scale. You don't go from manual to semi-automated to automated. That may seem like it will work, but it just does not scale. Can you talk to us about like full embrace of automation is really important?
100%. I'll give you an example for it right now, right? Like, so we are standardizing for SAST on CodeQL and SamGraph. Everything CodeQL can cover CodeQL because we find everything in GitHub Security Center. Everything CodeQL doesn't cover is just one more tool that is SamGraph because we have the advantage of community rules around that. No one would want to go and triage those findings in SamGraph. Everything, all the finding needs to be in GitHub Security Center. All the finding needs to be in the pull request within that the context of that developer. And that is driving the outcome that we want because now we can actually put a release based block where based on our SLA we can start basically keeping our baseline as clean as possible through processes like this. So if we had thought about no, let's first roll out SamGraph, let's teach developers on how to understand the findings of SamGraph, then we'll kind of semi-automate it, and then we'll automate it. It just doesn't work in the deluge of vulnerabilities and the number of proliferation of security tools that has happened. It just doesn't work where if it is not integrated into your CI/CD pipeline, an AppSec tool is as good as useless at this point. So
Right. So we have for the quick win for this period, we had a AppSec State of the Union. So we heard this from a few folks where a clear, concise report on where the security program stands and where it's headed. This presentation is for leadership. Cross-functional stakeholders should highlight accomplishments so far, key risks, steps needed to mature the program further. I think you emphasized the importance of framing this discussion around business impact. Security is in the service of the business, not the other way around. So, building this AppSec state, at 90 days, really being able to go back and demonstrate impact. This is a big quick win that you would argue is important as part of the process.
So at the end of 90 days, replaying back your understanding of the organization, your understanding of both the processes as well as the tech stack of the organization, having the lay of the land of your own team as well as the processes that you have as an AppSec team, and in a way like the risks that from your limited time there, like from 90 days, the risks that you have understood are present for the company, and then you present basically what's coming down the pike, right? It's not just what you learned, but like how are you going to move the maturity needle in these different areas that you have identified while reducing the risk for the organization. So yeah, that's the state of the union that I would generally give at the end of
Great.
90 days.
So let's go through the checklist for the stage. Standardize security tooling across teams to avoid duplication. Define service level agreements for security fixes aligned with business priorities. Develop scalable processes for handling vendor security, customer inquiries, and RFP responses. Identify manual processes that need to be automated for greater scalability. Ensure automation is integrated into the developer environment to prevent bottlenecks. Prioritize fixing high impact vulnerabilities over finding more vulnerabilities. Curate vulnerability lists to highlight the most critical issues for remediation. Compile key security metrics that show progress in vulnerability management, automation, remediation. And lastly, what we just described, present your AppSec State of the Union to executives and other teams. Is there anything we're missing there?
Oh, absolutely. That's great. I mean, a plan for all of that. We won't be able to do everything that's listed there in the 90 days, but at least have a plan for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we did talk through a number of like common mistakes for year one and how to avoid them. I think you've already touched on one, which is acting as a security cop instead of a business enabler. Like that's a mistake that many AppSec leaders may fall into. The other one we've talked about already is relying too heavily on manual processes instead of automation first approaches. And we just touched on that as well.
Right.
Here we just also talked about focusing on detection over remediation. Another mistake, right? You just said a lot of products just focus on how much detections they provide you. It's really about, prioritizing the ones that have business impact and remediating those and doing that in a way that is developer friendly. Mistake number 4, ignoring the developer experience, which James talked about. Mistake number 5, introducing tools without integration into developer workflows. Again, we've talked about that sort of ties into the developer experience. And you just brought that up very clearly. Mistake number 6, buying unnecessary tools that add complexity. I don't think we've talked about that one too much, but I think it seems obvious. So what is any other mistakes that come to mind outside of those ones? Anything that you would say like here's the one, looking back across your storied career, like here's the one thing you wish you could have done differently at one point or another?
Um, I think probably a sum of all of that, right? Like whenever you come in, there will always be priorities dictated by other leaders based on what was done in the past, or the past leader. So you need to be you need to resist the urge to fix the things that are dictated by different people who are not close to the AppSec team that it is. But yeah, outside of that, I would say like, yeah, don't overemphasize on compliance metrics or industry metrics. There is going to be a time to do that, but that is
Yeah.
not the first 90 days.
And then as you look ahead, the 91 days and beyond. By the way, folks, we're going to go and transition to a Q&A session shortly. So if you do have questions for Sumeet, please feel free to either put them into the chat or into the Q&A box in Zoom. As you think about like the day 91 and beyond, how you ensure your long-term AppSec impact. What is, if you had a few hints and tips for folks, what do you think about after those first 90 days?
Yeah, so once you have that plan ready, then the hard part comes, right? Like now is the part, the execution piece comes into play, and again the flexibility of as you start rolling things out. So there's never going to be a perfect roadmap. So you kind of start rolling out things in bite-sized chunks. You basically just like your engineering teams would, right? Like do it in an agile fashion, get the response, adjust as needed, and then see how things are going. And you make sure that the metrics that you have set out for yourself from a success point of view, uh, they are, first of all, reevaluate them. Are they serving the purpose still? And if they are, then are you measuring them and you're moving in the right direction for them? So
Yeah, that's great. All right. Well, let me just see here for a moment. We are going to transition shortly to the Q&A session. Very quickly, I did want to say thank you for joining. This session is brought to you by Healer. We are a application security business that is focused on helping application security teams do everything that Sumeet just described. How do we deliver better developer experiences, but ultimately, how do we know what's at risk and automate that fix? And we really do this by bringing runtime and business context to AppSec automatically. We connect into repositories, we connect into the cloud running environment, we build a runtime threat model that allows organizations to truly prioritize what's reachable, what's exploitable, what's running in production, what has business impact, to then automate remediation for that, and then to use that same runtime and business context to integrate with this ICD to really drive guardrails that prevent risk from reaching production. But we do have a question that came in that says, how/when would you convince a company to tackle tech debt as a priority? Oh, this is James. James, you might want to weigh on this as well as an engineering leader. But Sumeet, take it away.
Yeah, so again, I think a little bit of a generic answer. If you can show the value of reducing the tech debt, not just for the sake of like running the tech debt down or introducing a new technology, but there is either a business value or a security value where either you are getting efficiency gains or you are reducing the risk for the organization, or you are increasing the velocity of delivery. Whatever is the value or the business value out there, if that is clear, you will get the necessary audience to listen to it and potentially even the buy-in for it.
That's great. James, any
Yeah.
you want to weigh in there?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you can, a lot of tech debt ultimately is security debt as well, right? I mean, it's code that isn't updated often becomes more insecure as well, right? You think about dependency upgrades and so forth. So I think, one way is showing how disruptive that can be. When a massive, a massive vulnerability known, 0-day celebrity vuln comes, and you're having to then fix what are 3 years of essential tech debt of ignoring updates, right? It's that is massively disruptive to a business, and to an engineering organization. And so if you can really improve the hygiene, somewhat amortize that over the time period, you're not it's not going to be as disruptive. And so a lot of that is encouraging the organization to identify that and show that by paying this down now, right, incrementally, we're saving ourselves from a massive, say, roadmap disruption, right? That'll actually disrupt revenue, disrupt features, disrupt quality issues for being able to remediate quality issues for customers.
Then we've got one other question that came in, which is, Sumeet, how do you balance though in those first 30 days if there's leadership pressure for fast results, right? Like, so you come in, you've got this game plan, and you have leaders who are saying we need change now. How do you model? How does that work? Have you been in that position where you have to balance that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. One of the organizations that I joined, there was a critical vulnerability discovered the week that I joined. So, okay, trial by fire.
Welcome.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, like you start, you don't make wholesale changes. It doesn't mean that you do not have the license to drive things or at least makes the thing incrementally better of what the team is already doing. Again, like you are joining something that is already moving. So learning learning that ground realities and then driving things from there, I think is probably the key. But yeah, otherwise resisting the urge, you will always have the pressure to deliver something fast. But you need to be smart enough to understand that if you succumb to that pressure and deliver something that is half baked, that is going to have worse results than uh, resisting the urge to not change things wholesale in the first 30 days.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. Well, I don't think that there's any other questions that come in. This has been an incredible discussion. Sumeet, thank you for your time. You've been so generous with it. Thanks to all the attendees for joining us. James, thank you for sharing your wisdom from the engineering side.